Welcome to Port Hostage Diplomacy. We work to free hostages and the unjustly detained around the world. Together with their families, we share their stories every week and let you know how you can help bring them home. I'm Darren Nair. This week's episode is about Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. She's a British citizen, an innocent mother, and a charity worker from London who has been held hostage in Iran since 3rd April 2016. Two former UK Foreign Secretaries, Jack Straw and Jeremy Hunt, have both called Nazanin a hostage. The current chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, has also called her a hostage. When asked on television if Nazanin is a hostage, the former Foreign Secretary and current Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, Dominic Raab, said he cannot argue against that characterization. In September 2016, just a few months after Nazanin was taken, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention stated that Nazanin's imprisonment in Iran was arbitrary and called for her immediate release. Arbitrary is another word for unjust or wrongful. Iran has a long history of taking innocent people with foreign passports hostage to extract concessions from their home country, which in Nazanin's case is Britain. This is state-sponsored hostage-taking, also known as hostage diplomacy. Now, what is it that Iran wants in return for releasing this innocent mother from London, you may ask? Well, the Iranian regime want the UK to pay a 40-year-old $400 million debt that the UK owes Iran. In the 1970s, the Iranian government ordered around 1,000 Chieftain tanks and armored vehicles from Britain and paid the British £400 million for them. When the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran, the government was overthrown and Britain decided not to deliver these tanks to the new regime in power in Iran. And they also decided not to pay the money back. An international court has ruled that Britain must pay Iran this money, and yet the British government has yet to do so. Let me be clear, this in no way whatsoever justifies Iran's hostage-taking, but it is important to know why they're doing this. Nazanin is a hostage being used as a bargaining chip by the Iranian regime to force Britain to pay this £400 million debt. Nazanin's husband, Richard Ratcliffe, has been campaigning tirelessly these last 5 years to free his wife. I've had the honor of campaigning with him since the beginning of his campaign. Richard was my first ever guest on this podcast, and you can listen to that episode titled Free Nazanin, British Hostage in Iran, published a couple months ago on 1st September, to learn more about what happened to Nazanin and how Richard started the Free Nazanin campaign. At this very moment, Richard Ratcliffe is on a hunger strike outside the UK Foreign Office in London, which is right next to the Prime Minister's office. It is day 11 of his hunger strike. It is very cold, it is raining, and he has been sleeping in a tent on the pavement outside the Foreign Office for the last 11 days. Why? To put pressure on the British government to free his wife Nazanin and bring her home to West Hampstead in London so she can finally be reunited with Richard and their 7-year-old daughter, Gabriella. Now, what many people don't know is that the British government is not legally required to protect British citizens overseas, and therefore rarely does the right thing unless there is a lot of pressure from the public and the media. Richard knows this, which is why he is on hunger strike. Richard has 4 demands for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Number 1, acknowledge Nazanin and other British citizens held in Iran as hostages. Number 2, punish the perpetrators. Number 3, keep the promise to settle the £400 million debt. Number 4, commit to end Iran's state hostage-taking in the JCPOA-Iran nuclear deal negotiations. This is not the first time Richard has gone on hunger strike in the last 2 years. It's actually the second. The first one lasted 14 days outside the Iranian embassy in London. The purpose of the first strike was mainly to put pressure on the Iranians to free Nazanin. Now, they didn't, but it definitely raised awareness of Nazanin's case significantly in the UK and around the world. Richard was supported by members of parliament from almost every political party in the UK. Now, if you follow British politics, there are rarely any issues which unite the country. Richard's campaign to free his wife Nazanin did do just that. Hundreds, if not thousands of people came to visit Richard and say they supported him. I was there watching over him every day during his last hunger strike, and I've been there almost every day this time. I interviewed Richard on day 2 of this current hunger strike. Here's our conversation. Richard, how are you feeling?
I'm tired, a bit cold, probably a bit more settled today than we were yesterday. Today we got rained on, so we had our first experience of that. A lot of people came down, first few MPs, a number of people that had come to visit last hunger strike came down again. Quite a lot of media, and also actually we had a question of Parliament, an urgent question. So I went to Parliament to watch that debate. We're not actually that far. The police came again. They said, "Listen, it's okay." They'd come in the middle of the night to try and move us on. It's a lot colder than last time. We'll take it day by day. But yeah, pretty shattered. But more settled now than we were yesterday.
So I see people have been visiting you, bringing blankets, flasks, hot water, lights. What do you think of the support you've got so far from the public?
Oh, look, it's really lovely that people have come down. I think it's, you can't do something like this on your own. We've, throughout our story, had an awful lot of people caring and showing that care. It's been nice to see people I hadn't seen for a long time. We've had some people I hadn't met before coming down to show solidarity, but also some that, I hadn't seen since we last on hunger strike. I think in terms of yesterday it was just a tent and a couple of chairs. There's now, as you say, a lot more decoration here. That feels safer. It feels like sort of an embodiment of that kindness of people, kindness of strangers. Obviously, when you start a hunger strike, it feels like quite a brave thing. If that makes sense, because it's a bit provocative. We're here camping in front of the Foreign Office's doorstep to embarrass them. There's no way around it. The state has all sorts of powers to move us on if it wanted to. Policeman said today, it's not upset, but I'm fully behind you. And that care and support is what will get Nazanin home. It's what gets all my family through this. I think the difference I find this time round, this time we're doing hunger strike, we've got Gabriella here. So I see the strain more on her. I see the strain more on my family around her, and it's a bit colder. It's a bit harsher. So we'll have to sort of think carefully how we take it forwards. The point of it was to push the government to do something different. The government in Parliament today said nothing different. We'll have to see how things go. I think we may need to dig in a bit longer than they're not going to quickly change.
So you have 4 demands for the Prime Minister. Number 1, acknowledge Nazanin and the others as hostages. Number 2, punish the perpetrators. 3, keep the promise to settle the debt. 4, commit to end state hostage-taking in JCPOA negotiations. Do you feel you've had any traction?
Well, no, not so far. The Minister was very careful not to use the word hostage in Parliament today. Got asked directly a couple of times, got asked directly on all of those, and didn't do anything other than say it was a priority and they were committed to getting people home. So we're talking past each other. I think it was clear to everyone in Parliament that the Minister's answers didn't muster. And probably clear the Minister himself that, he was being asked very precise, specific things and he was giving generic platitudes back. We'll see as the days go on. Behind closed doors, we've had these conversations with the government before. The fact that we're on a hunger strike is not the first stage of those conversations. It shows that they're not keen to change their path. I happen to think that their strategy is is the wrong one, that they do need to be a lot more honest about hostage taking. And that's what we've been saying in the media. We'll see really what traction we get. And it's from that traction that we'll be able to move things.
At the end of day 5 of his hunger strike, I spoke to him again. Today, Richard had a meeting with the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss. Richard, did your meeting meet expectations?
Well, in truth, it was a disappointing meeting. I thought it might go the way it did. So essentially she said, listen, we're very sympathetic. Sincerely, we care a lot. And we're, working hard on this case. But they weren't prepared to change anything that they were doing. In the hunger strike, we've got essentially two kinds of demands. One is to say, Nazanin's held over British government debt. You need to settle that debt. And the other is to say, you need to stop encouraging hostage taking, and you need to challenge it in different ways. They weren't willing to disclose why they wouldn't settle the debt or what the problem was. They, weren't willing on all the different points about challenging hostage taking, apart from the abstract that it was important to do. They weren't willing to countenance any of the different ideas we talked through. So we got a bit frustrated. At one point, my uncle said, listen, you don't have a strategy, you just have some tactics. I pointed out that if they carried on the current course, Nazanin was going to be returned to prison. I believe that to be absolutely true. And I think it was a tough meeting with the Foreign Secretary. It felt at some point like staff intervened to end it early. I think we all came out a bit deflated, particularly those that had expectations of it achieving something. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but what we do know doesn't stack up. It is, unbelievable that for 5 years an innocent British citizen and other British citizens can be held over a government debt, and all the government can say is, well, we'd like to pay it, but we can't for secret reasons we can't tell you about. We don't want to do anything to offend the Iranians. Holding their money is probably the key offence. So, I think we came out thinking, well, we need to carry on sitting here, carry on the hunger strike, and we will look to see what happens in the days to come.
So it's been 5 days since you've been on the hunger strike. Your last meal was on Sunday morning, and it's quite cold outside now. It's been raining as well. How are you feeling?
Yeah, definitely getting slower. You can probably hear that in my voice and in the speed of my thoughts. And yes, it is colder. We could have been less lucky with the weather, but it's chilly tonight. I'm sitting here with a hot water bottle and a blanket. Someone kindly brought a hot water bottle. I think this will get tough the days that go. Not hungry. Still, I was looking at managed to wash earlier this morning and I had a look at a mirror. Not looking noticeably thinner, but definitely, more tired.
So Gabriella, your 7-year-old daughter, has been visiting you every day. How has she been taking your hunger strike?
Well, she probably doesn't notice the hunger strike component. She knows I'm not allowed to eat, and so she was eating some M&Ms and having a great time, enjoying the fact that she could eat them and I couldn't. But the camping part and the sort of coming every day here, it's a strange thing for a 7-year-old to be exposed to. There's lots of TV cameras around and lots of strangers and lots of politicians. Very proud of the fact that she met the mayor and that he didn't just come to meet Daddy, he also came to meet her. She was very proud of telling that to Nazanin. I think as the days go on, it could become more upsetting for her. At the moment, she's had a happy time playing with children that have come down with their families, playing with the people, some of the helpers and supporters that have come. But certainly, Nazanin is worried. She's obviously worried about being called back into prison. And the judiciary spokesman yesterday announced that her court case is finished. We just haven't yet implemented it. But she's also worrying about me being here on the pavement on hunger strike, the impact that has on Gabriella, and the fact that the government isn't changing, isn't moving. So I think really beside herself, not able to focus on anything. I've had a few calls and messages with her throughout the days. It does impose a burden on everyone. And there's a balance to do there between, what's enough to make a point to the government. So they really get it. And I don't feel they got it today. And what is not too much trauma to impose on Nazanin.
So tomorrow you're having a pumpkin carving event.
Yes, we're doing two things tomorrow, actually. One is we're delivering the Change.org petition to Downing Street. So if anyone wants to sign still, before we do that, there's still time. That'll be about lunchtime. And then after that, we're going to be doing pumpkin carving ahead of Halloween. So we've got a number of pumpkins here. We're getting some more in the morning. And we'll carve those with small children and bigger children, and then have those decorating the area behind us, behind the camp. And it's just to symbolise we're still here, partly to trying to do different things that are creative. I think the value that there is for me, and that people come down. I had lots of people come down again today to just wish us well and wish us luck and see how they're following our story and sign the visitors book. And that's a visitors book that one day Nazanin will be able to come back and read, and to realise all that care and love that is there. It remains really important. We'll try and do a few more events. At the same time, we're probably going to have to think through what's going to prod the government to move. And me sitting here didn't do that today. That may change in the days to come. Maybe we might need to do different strategies.
So what can the public do to help now, given that you're 5 days into your hunger strike? Government doesn't seem to be budging. Iranian delegation may be coming up to Glasgow for the climate change conference. What can the public do to help?
Well, we're still asking people to ask their MPs to come down. If they live nearby to London, please come and visit and say hello and sign the book. And then the other activity we've got, which we'll start to do next week mainly, and perhaps even the week after if it lasts that long. We've been asking people to make patches. So patches that you would make into a patchwork quilt, and a big patchwork quilt to symbolise all the outside warmth and care that has been sustaining us. So if anyone, whether it's making a patch with a Posca pen or a felt tip pen, or doing it with needle thread or embroidery and a very delicate one, the size is 15 centimeters by 15 centimeters, which is that's the border, and then the bit to draw on or to sew 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So there's essentially a 2.5 centimeter border around it. I think, with all these things, the value in having something that's made from it, and that's created out of it, something positive, it's a legacy that is something that Nazanin can come back to. So, please, if you're at all creative, the details are on Amnesty's website. And please do, keep pushing your MPs to come down and keeping the government honest.
A hunger strike will definitely affect your health. And if it goes on for too long, the damage done to your body could be irreversible, and the person on hunger strike could die. Richard's sister, Rebecca Jones, knows this very well. She's a doctor, and she has been watching over Richard during this hunger strike, while also babysitting Richard and Nazanin's 7-year-old daughter, Gabriella. I spoke to Rebecca to find out what a hunger strike does to your body. Rebecca, what is it like when someone goes on a hunger strike?
So for the person going on a hunger strike, the first day or so they feel a little bit hungry. And I think as your body tries to adjust, it's quite difficult to control your emotions. I think that's what Richard found. Then you get more into even keel, and you just slowly, day by day, feel a bit weaker. So at the moment, we're day 4 of the hunger strike. Richard's actually pretty good spirits. His body's got used to not eating, keeping hydrated, but he is starting to look a little bit weaker, a bit more tired as day goes on.
I understand last time during the previous hunger strike, you were giving him multivitamins, thiamine, and electrolyte replacement tablets. Are you doing the same thing this time around?
Yeah, so we started electrolyte replacement tablets. I haven't started thiamine yet. We will do thiamine. At the moment, it's probably still a bit early days to necessarily worry too much about it, but that's certainly something we'll have to consider, because the body uses up quite a lot of thiamine, especially on the refeeding. That's when you can get into problems if your thiamine levels are particularly low.
So given we're in the middle of a pandemic, and unlike last time, it's the end of autumn, beginning of winter, in a way, or at least it feels like it. What are signs that this needs to stop?
Yeah, so obviously we have concerns that he might contract COVID. Now he's been double vaccinated and he's also in an outside environment, so we've reduced risks as much as we can. I think the concerns with the weather is a big one, especially as the temperature drops. We've been quite lucky this week. It's been relatively mild for this time of year. But if the rain kicks in heavily or if it gets very cold, we've got big concerns about hypothermia. Certainly last time, you may remember towards the end of the hunger strike, and that was in the warm in the summer, he was starting to shiver quite a bit. So I think we will have to really keep a track of making sure that he manages to stay warm enough and play each day by each day.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nazanin's hostage-taking and Richard's campaign to free her has shown the world that there are some very bad people out there. But it has also proved something that many of us know but rarely see on the news, that there are also so many good, caring people out there in the world. Throughout these 11 days, there have been many amazing people who showed up to help Richard during his hunger strike. Some of them showed up 2 years ago during his last hunger strike and decided to show up again to help. Christine and Emily have been showing up every day to help out in any way possible. They brought sanitizer, mats, mugs, mint tea in flasks, and even kept Gabriella company while Richard was doing media interviews. Kasra and Francis, who live nearby, have been showing up every evening before Richard goes to bed with hot water bottles and flasks. They even let Richard take a shower in their house during the weekend. They picked him up in front of the Foreign Office, drove him to their house, and brought him back. On weekdays, Richard has been going to the Parliament building in the mornings to take a shower, thanks to his amazing MP Tulip Siddiq and her staff, who have been letting him in to use these facilities. Ed from West Hampstead has been bringing bottles of water and flasks. Claire, a good caring person on Twitter, decided to buy Richard a new tent because his current one was leaking when it rained. She also bought him a woolly hat and some gloves and had Amazon deliver them to Richard at his tent in front of the Foreign Office. There are many others who brought blankets, mats, torchlights, power banks, sweaters, jackets, and even a pair of socks for Richard. Every night, there is at least one person sleeping in a separate tent next to Richard's in case he needs help in an emergency. Anyone who has done this can tell you it is not a pleasant experience, but they did it anyway because they care. During these last 11 days, Richard has been visited by members of Parliament and members of the House of Lords. He was visited by Mayor of London Sadiq Khan, as well as religious leaders and celebrities. Everyone who has met Richard will tell you that he is a truly good person and has been amazingly strong, resilient, and dignified in the face of this injustice. He puts on a brave face in front of the cameras, but when he needs to lean on someone, he leans on his parents and siblings who have been there to hold him up every step of the way. I spoke to Richard's younger brother, Chris Ratcliffe. Chris, it's been 5.5 years since your sister-in-law has been taken hostage in Iran. You and the rest of your family have been a pillar of support for Richard. You've been taking great care of him. You guys have been amazing. In addition to being strong for Richard, you are also experiencing your trauma of having a family member being taken hostage. So my question is, what has it been like the last 5.5 years?
I think it's been really hard. I think, first of all, I think everyone goes through the immediate trauma of when Nazanin was taken and the kind of shock and no one really understanding it or knowing kind of quite what to do. But since then, I suppose it's just there's a kind of a cloud over the kind of family and even kind of family events and things. There's always something missing, and I think that's why we do come together and kind of campaign with Richard and do what we can to kind of bring Nazanin home, because that's that we hope it helps, but it also, I think it's kind of cathartic and it helps us.
You're also Gabriella's uncle. I know at the beginning of the campaign, I've seen you and your wife Shoma post photos of you Skyping with Gabriella when she was in Tehran. Now she's back home. What has it been like seeing Gabriella back and just comforting her when Richard's going through a hunger strike like this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of bittersweet having Gabriella home. I think obviously we all missed her, and it's amazing to see in a way how well adapted she is, kind of coming over here, and how she's it's kind of become her home again. But it's also sad as well, because there's a part of her life which is missing, and I think she was aware of that when she came over, but increasingly as she gets older, she's starting to kind of maybe understand it a bit more. So it's bittersweet, and I think, yeah, hope for her that there's that there won't be kind of deep trauma there, and we will all do our best to look after her and care for her and kind of help her to kind of pull through with Richard and kind of Nazanin when this is all over.
So tonight you're watching over Richard doing a hunger strike. Now, I've done this myself. It's very hard to go to sleep in the cold in a tent, and it's quite noisy. How do you manage?
Well, I'm wearing lots of thermals, perhaps too much because I'm actually hot. And I think the trick is to have a child waking up all through the night and then come prepared to be very tired, and then hopefully that will see me in good stead.
Anyone who is a good parent or has been lucky enough to have good parents will know they'll always be there to protect their children. Richard Ratcliffe has been lucky to have very good parents. Here is my conversation with Richard's mum, Barbara Ratcliffe. Barbara, it's been 5.5 years since your family's life has been turned upside down. You've been a pillar of support for Richard and your granddaughter, Gabriella. What has the experience been like?
Mind-blowing. I had no idea that ordinary families could find themselves in this position. No, I still don't understand why. What have we ever done to the two governments?
I've been campaigning with your family for 5.5 years. You've welcomed me as part of the family, and I really appreciate that. And I know that Richard's an amazing campaigner, and he is strong and brave, and he puts on a strong and brave face for the cameras and for the public. But when he needs someone to lean on, you're there for him. Your husband, John, Richard's dad, is there for him. His siblings and family members are all there for him. How do you encourage him to keep going on? How do you give him strength?
I really don't know. I think he's born with the strength. Obviously, we'll support him in everything he does, unless it was criminal. But yes, he's doing so well. All we can do is our own little bits. I mean, I can do the craft work. That's not a problem to me. My husband likes doing, or doesn't know that he likes doing, but he will do the proofreading. And then our daughter, she organises it, and the other two boys get told what to do and have to do it. No, everybody's helping. And it's not just our family. We've got a wider family, obviously. And my sister's family are fabulous at doing things as well. And friends do things. Just passing the word around and hope to goodness that the government eventually will pay this wretched debt and she can come out. If it's as simple as that, which it certainly was at the beginning.
So how do you keep going on? I mean, obviously it's very difficult watching your son on hunger strike, and this is the second time. How do you find the strength to keep going on?
I don't know. I think it comes from within. If it's your child, then you just find the strength. I really can't tell you where it comes from. But what's the alternative? There is no alternative for us. We've just got to keep going.
How do you convince Gabriella that things are going to be all right? Because I know as a 7-year-old, her world is very small, and she lives her life day to day. She lives in the moment. She's still having fun right now. She's at a Halloween party, but she knows that her mum's in Iran and can't come home even though she wants to. How do you kind of protect Gabriella, your granddaughter, from this?
I think she protects herself. We wouldn't dream of bringing it up in conversation if she doesn't want to talk. She doesn't often want to talk, but occasionally she does, and we'll do it at a 7-year-old's, well, we hope it's a 7-year-old's level. Oh, she's got lots of cousins in England and in Iran, but the English ones are nearer to her age. And they try to treat her like a little sister. She's a funny little girl. She likes to speak English when she's in England. She's Iranian when she's in Iran. And she's told us that, and we respect that because she is both. I think we support her, and she leads the support. Nobody stirs her up with it. So we just live ordinary lives. But she will tell us when she wants to speak about it. She denies that she knows any Farsi because when in England, she's English.
Okay.
But when she talks to her mum, sometimes she will speak Farsi because she's Iranian then.
So there have obviously been a lot of good, caring people show up to help. People who you didn't know before, but saw your cases on the news, follow your petition, follow your the Free Nazanin Twitter account, and have decided to show up to help. To just talk about the support you've received.
The support is absolutely amazing. So many lovely people in the world. They really are helping us enormously. People power is what will eventually get her back, even if the two governments aren't bothering. I feel sure that people power will work in the end. And we're almost like a family each time. The time, it was in the summer before.
Yeah.
And we all got on with each other, didn't we? It was a lovely experience in that way. This one, it's a bit colder, but still the people are coming and being so supportive, and it matters. It matters to us, but it matters even more to Ricky. Yeah. And they're signing the book so Nazanin can see it when she comes back. And we can show her it over FaceTime, but she can really look at it later.
So when you're speaking to Nazanin and she's still in Iran, anxious, worried that she might go to prison, how do you keep her hopes up while at the same time, I wouldn't say suppressing your own concerns and anxieties, but making sure that you say what she needs to hear? How do you go about that?
Well, I hope we do all the time. It's probably difficult, but it isn't, because you don't want to hurt anybody. I think I tend to be sort of slightly more optimistic, just purely because, well, A, I have never experienced anything like this before, and B, I think it won't help her if we're all pessimistic. And we tend to talk about artwork or that sort of thing because Naz liked to do sewing and painting and those sorts of things, which I like doing. So we tend to go off on an angle of that more. Or we talk about Gabriella, what funny things she's done or said.
Okay. And finally, Richard's case has highlighted that the British government needs to do more to protect British citizens overseas. This isn't just about Iran, even though Iran are the culprits here, the Iranian regime, sorry. But the British government does have a duty to protect its citizens overseas. What would you say to the British government?
We need to pay the debts because it's not a ransom, it is a debt. I had no idea that Britain behaved like that and didn't pay debts. And bring her home.
It's been an honor campaigning with Richard and his family. And as I say to all my guests, we'll be right here by their side until their loved one comes back home. Please do tell your friends and family about Nazanin. Help Richard spread the word. Help him free Nazanin. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back with part 2 next week. Take care.